Rancher rescues puppy in storm, but didn't expect what it would become. William Thompson wiped his tired eyes as the rain pounded on his roof for the third straight day. At 72 years old, he had never seen such a violent storm hit his ranch in rural Montana, and the constant sound of leaks dripping into buckets scattered around the room had kept him awake since dawn. That's when he heard a faint whimper cutting through the sound of the rain. William stopped tending the wood stove and listened. The sound came from outside near the barn he hadn't used in years. He grabbed the flashlight he always kept on the kitchen table and went to the window, trying to see through the curtain of water falling from the sky. Another whimper, even weaker. "Must be some hurt animal," he murmured to himself, pulling on the raincoat hanging behind the door. The walk to the barn was difficult. The mud reached his ankles, and the strong winds pushed his thin frame from side to side. When he finally reached the barn door, he had to force it open against the wind's resistance. The flashlight lit up the dark, damp interior, revealing old tools covered in dust and cobwebs. Another whimper. William directed the light to the right corner, and his heart clenched. A soaked cardboard box lay on its side, and from inside it peeked a small brown head. A puppy, no more than a few weeks old, was shaking uncontrollably. "Good Lord," he whispered, stepping closer slowly. The puppy tried to lift its head when it saw him, but was too weak. William knelt in the mud and carefully picked up the tiny creature. The animal was freezing and wet, breathing with difficulty. Someone had abandoned this helpless being right in the middle of the worst storm in years. William cradled the puppy against his chest, feeling its tiny, rapid heartbeat against his ribs. 5 years ago, he had sworn never to have another pet. 5 years since Margaret, his wife, had passed, leaving him alone on this ranch, and with her went Duke, his faithful companion of 15 years. The pain of loss had been too great for him to ever want to go through that again. But looking into those barely open brown eyes, William felt something he hadn't in a long time: compassion. The puppy needed him, and maybe, just maybe, he needed the company too, even if he didn't want to admit it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Back in the house, William made an improvised bed with old towels near the wood stove. The puppy was breathing poorly, and he could hear a strange wheezing from its tiny lungs. He took a clean towel and gently dried the animal, trying to warm its fragile body. "Easy there, little one. You'll be all right," he murmured, though he wasn't sure if his words were true. He prepared a makeshift bottle with warm milk and a syringe he kept for giving medicine to the cows when needed. The puppy could barely swallow, but William persisted, dropping tiny amounts into its mouth. Every drop that went down was a small victory. The night was long. William slept in the living room chair to stay close to the puppy, waking every hour to check if it was still breathing. 3 times before dawn, he had to warm the animal with his own hands when he noticed it growing too cold. When the sun finally rose the next morning, the storm had passed, but the puppy was still fighting to survive. William decided it needed professional help. He placed the animal in a basket lined with cloth and drove his old pickup truck into town. Dr. David Miller, the local veterinarian for over 20 years, carefully examined the puppy in his office on the main street of Pine Creek. William watched nervously as the vet listened to the animal's lungs with a stethoscope. "I won't lie to you, Mr. Thompson," said Dr. Miller, removing the stethoscope from his ears. "This puppy has severe pneumonia. Given the condition he was in, he was probably exposed to cold and dampness for many hours. Will he survive?" The vet sighed, looking at the exhausted puppy sleeping on the exam table. "The chances are slim. I'll give you some medication and show you how to care for him. But it'll depend a lot on the animal's strength. The next 3 days are crucial." William returned home carrying a bag of medicine and detailed instructions. Every 4 hours he had to give the puppy antibiotics, apply warm compresses to his chest, and try to feed him small portions of special food mixed with milk. The first 48 hours were a nightmare. The puppy barely moved, struggled to breathe, and refused food. William didn't sleep properly, spending nights beside the animal, constantly checking his breathing and temperature. His trembling, aged hands applied the compresses with the care of someone holding the most precious thing in the world. Betty Johnson, his closest neighbor, showed up on the second day with fresh eggs. She was a 65-year-old woman, widowed for 10 years, who always tried to help William even when he didn't ask. She had a habit of spreading gossip around town, but deep down, she had a good heart. "William, I heard you picked up some stray in the storm," she said, walking into the kitchen uninvited. "I hope you're not wasting your time and money on that." "It's just a puppy, Betty. He was nearly dead," William replied, too tired to argue. "You're too old to be worrying about street dogs. You should think about moving to town, living near people, not out here alone in the middle of nowhere." William didn't answer. He knew Betty spoke this way because she worried about him, in her own fashion. But he also knew that by the end of the day, the whole town would hear he was losing his mind, caring for an abandoned animal. On the third night, when William was almost ready to give up, the miracle happened. He woke to a strange little noise and saw the puppy standing, trying to drink water from the dish he'd left by the makeshift bed. The animal was weak, but his eyes shone with a life that hadn't been there before. "You did it, little one," William whispered, feeling tears run down his bearded face. "You did it." That morning, the puppy ate for the first time in 3 days. Small licks at the food mixed with milk, but he ate. William called Dr. Miller to share the good news. "It's a real miracle," the vet said over the phone. "Keep up the care, but I think the worst is over." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The following days brought an astonishing transformation. The puppy not only survived, but began growing at an impressive rate. Within 2 weeks, he was running around the house, playing with William's slippers and barking at birds that landed on the kitchen window. William decided to name him Rusty, a name Margaret had always said she'd give a son if they'd had children. Rusty had brown fur with lighter patches, floppy ears, and expressive eyes that seemed to understand every word William spoke. What impressed William the most was the animal's intelligence. Rusty quickly learned the right place to relieve himself, didn't chew on furniture or shoes, and always seemed to know when his owner was sad or worried, coming closer for affection. In a month, Rusty already weighed 22 pounds. In 2 months, he had reached 55 pounds. Dr. David was intrigued by the rapid growth when William took him in for a routine checkup. "Mr. Thompson, this animal is developing far beyond the norm," said the vet, examining Rusty, who behaved calmly on the table. "By the size of his paws and bone structure, he's going to be a big dog, very big." "Is that a problem?" "Not a problem, but it is unusual. Are you sure he's just a regular mutt? The shape of his head, the length of his legs, the muscle tone, there seems to be some special lineage there." "It doesn't matter to me if he's purebred or a mutt," William replied, petting Rusty's head. "He's my companion, that's what matters." Dr. David suggested some tests to better understand the animal's genetics, but William refused. He didn't want to spend money he didn't have on unnecessary exams. Rusty was healthy and happy, and that was enough. Life on the ranch had changed completely. William woke up every day at 5 in the morning, no longer out of lonely habit, but because Rusty climbed onto the bed and licked his face until he got up. Together they took their first walk of the day around the property, checking on the animals and crops. Rusty showed a natural instinct for helping with ranch work. When the chickens strayed too far, he gently herded them without hurting them. If a cow wandered from the herd, Rusty brought her back with firm but never aggressive barks. It was as if he was born for it. Michael Thompson, William's only son, called on a Thursday night. He had lived in Denver for 15 years, worked at an accounting firm, and only visited his father at Christmas and on his birthday. Calls were rare and always brief. "Dad, Mrs. Betty called me saying you've been spending money on a vet because of a dog," Michael said, his tone concerned. "Are you sure you're okay?" "I'm great, Michael. Better than I've been in years." "Dad, you're 72. Don't you think it's a little late to start raising a dog? What if he gets sick? What if you can't take care of him?" William stayed quiet for a moment, looking at Rusty, who slept on the living room rug. The dog had become his most faithful companion, his reason to wake up every day with purpose. Michael, I know you worry about me, but I'm fine. Rusty is good for me. Rusty? You even gave him a name. Dad, I've been thinking a lot about this. I think it's time you sold the ranch and came to live with me in the city. There are hospitals, doctors, people your age here. This is my home, Michael. I was born here. Your mother lived here with me for 40 years. I'm not abandoning everything now. But Dad, the subject is closed, son. William hung up with a heavy heart. He knew Michael meant well, but he didn't understand that the ranch was more than just a place to him. It was his history, his memories, his identity. And now it was Rusty's home too. March brought heavy rains again, though not as intense as the storm that had brought Rusty into his life. One Saturday morning, William woke up feeling a strange pain in his chest. He tried to ignore it, drank a glass of water and started making coffee as usual. The pain grew worse. William leaned against the kitchen counter, breathing heavily. Rusty, who had been drinking water, lifted his head and ran to him, sniffing and whining softly as if sensing something was wrong. "Easy there, Rusty. It's probably just exhaustion," said William, but the pain was becoming unbearable. Suddenly, everything went dark. William collapsed onto the kitchen floor, unconscious. Rusty barked desperately, licked his owner's face, nudged him with his paws. When he realized William wasn't responding, something instinctive took over the animal. Rusty ran to the front door and began scratching the wood fiercely. The door was only slightly ajar, not locked, and after several minutes of persistence, he managed to push it open. Without hesitation, he bolted toward Betty Johnson's house, which was about 500 yards away. Betty was watering her garden when she saw the massive dog sprinting toward her, barking frantically. Her first reaction was fear. Rusty had grown so big, he looked like a wolf. "Get out of here, mutt," she yelled, grabbing the hose to shoo him away. But Rusty didn't back down. He kept barking, ran a few yards toward William's house, then turned back, barking even louder, trying to make Betty understand she needed to follow him. The woman noticed the animal's behavior was odd, nothing like aggression. "What's wrong, Rusty? What happened to your William?" Hearing his owner's name, Rusty barked even more intensely and began running back toward the farm, glancing behind to make sure Betty was following. She dropped the hose and ran after him, her heart pounding with worry. She found William lying on the kitchen floor, pale and unconscious. Betty rushed to the phone and called emergency services in Pine Creek, then dialed Dr. David Miller, who also handled emergencies. The ambulance arrived in 20 minutes. The paramedics stabilized William and took him to the town hospital. Dr. David arrived shortly after and confirmed the early signs of a heart attack. Another 15 minutes, and it could have been fatal, the doctor told Betty, who was waiting for news in the hospital hallway. "How did you find him so quickly?" "It was his dog. Rusty came to get me. I've never seen anything like it," Betty replied, still in shock. The news spread fast in the small town. William's son was notified and arrived from Denver the next day, finding his father stable but still hospitalized. Rusty had stayed at the farm under Betty's temporary care, but he wouldn't eat properly and spent the whole day lying on the porch, staring at the road as if waiting for William to return. Michael Thompson was a 45-year-old man, his hair already graying, always dressed in formal clothes even on weekends. As a child, he loved visiting his parents' farm, but city life had distanced him from that rural world he now considered outdated. "Dad, this time you can't be stubborn," Michael said, sitting by the hospital bed. "This heart attack was a warning. You need constant medical care. You need to be near hospitals." "What about Rusty?" William asked, his voice still weak. "The dog? Dad, you almost left us for good, and you're worried about a dog." "He saved my life, Michael. If it weren't for Rusty, I would have..." "All right, Dad. We'll figure it out later. First, you need to recover and accept that you can't live alone on a farm in the middle of nowhere." William fell silent, but his eyes filled with tears. They weren't just tears of sadness, but of deep anguish. How could he explain to his son that Rusty wasn't just a dog, but his reason for living? How could he make Michael understand that the farm was his soul? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing, During the 5 days of hospitalization, Betty took care of Rusty and the farm. Every time she visited the hospital, she would tell William how depressed the dog was, refusing to eat properly and whimpering softly every night. "He misses you, William," Betty would say. "I've never seen an animal so attached to its owner." Michael listened to these conversations with growing impatience. To him, the dog was just another problem keeping his father from making the sensible decision to move to the city. He started calling real estate agents, researching the value of the farm. When William was discharged from the hospital, he found Rusty waiting for him on the porch. The reunion was emotional. The dog jumped around his owner, licked his face and whined with joy. William knelt with difficulty and hugged Rusty, feeling like he was home again. "Thank you for saving my life, buddy," he whispered into the dog's ear. Michael witnessed the scene with a mix of emotion and irritation. The love between his father and that animal was undeniable, but it only made his mission harder. In the following days, Michael began pressing more insistently about selling the farm. He showed listings for apartments in Denver, talked about the advantages of city life, and argued about the risks of William living alone. "Dad, you had a heart attack. What happens if you have another one and I'm not here? What if the dog can't get help next time? Rusty saved me once. He'll save me as many times as he has to," William replied, petting the dog sleeping at his feet. "Dad, be realistic. You can't bet your life on a dog's intelligence." It was during one of these arguments that Rusty once again demonstrated his extraordinary abilities. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, desperate shouts came from the road in front of the farm. Rusty lifted his head, alert, and started barking in the direction of the cries. William and Michael went out to see what was happening and found a panicked family standing beside a parked car. "Help! Our daughter is lost!" the woman cried in distress. It was the Anderson family, returning from a picnic. They had stopped so their 3-year-old daughter could relieve herself in the bushes. The little girl, Emily, had wandered off and disappeared into the cornfield bordering the road. "She went in there, and we can't find her anymore," explained the father, Stephen Anderson, pointing to the dense cornfield. "We've looked everywhere, called her name, but nothing." Michael grabbed his phone to call the fire department, but William looked at Rusty, who was restless, sniffing the air and staring intently at the field. "Rusty, go fetch," William said, trusting the animal's instinct. Rusty bolted into the cornfield. Michael protested, saying it was crazy to rely on a dog to find a lost child, but William asked them to wait. The dog disappeared among the cornstalks. For 20 minutes, all they heard was the rustling of leaves in the wind. The Andersons grew more desperate, and Michael insisted they call the fire department immediately. Then suddenly Rusty's bark echoed from a distant part of the field. It wasn't an ordinary bark. It was urgent, insistent. William, still recovering from his heart attack, started walking toward the sound, followed by Michael and the family. They found Rusty in a clearing near an abandoned well that had been on the property for decades. The dog stood between the edge of the well and a small girl crying on the ground just 2 meters from the deep hole. "Emily!" the mother screamed, running to hug her daughter. "The dog found me," the girl said between sobs. "I was scared and he stayed with me." Stephen Anderson was in shock. His daughter had been just steps away from falling into a 50-foot well. If Rusty hadn't found her in time... "How did he know where to look?" asked Stephen, hugging his daughter. "Rusty has a special instinct," replied William, proud of his companion. Michael watched everything in silence, for the first time beginning to understand that the animal truly had something different. He wasn't just an ordinary mutt, like everyone thought. The Anderson family couldn't stop thanking them. They offered money as a reward, but William refused. He said Rusty had only done what came naturally to him, helping those in need. The news of the rescue spread through Pine Creek that same day. At the downtown bar, the market, the town square, everyone was talking about Mr. Williams' dog who had saved the Anderson girl. Sheriff Frank Rogers, responsible for the region's safety, showed up at the ranch 2 days later. He was a 50-year-old man experienced in cases of missing persons in rural areas. "Mr. William, I heard about what happened to the Anderson girl," said the sheriff, watching Rusty play in the yard. "That animal has impressive tracking instincts." "He's always been clever," replied William. "My question is, would you be interested in training Rusty to work with us? We have many cases of missing people in the area. Elderly folks with Alzheimer's who wander off, children lost on trails, hunters who can't find their way back. A dog with those skills would be very valuable. Michael, who was listening, grew interested. What kind of work would that be? Search and rescue training. The state would cover the training costs and provide a monthly stipend for the owner. Of course, the dog would still live here, but be available for emergencies. William looked at Rusty, thoughtful. The idea of his companion helping save lives moved him, but it also worried him. What if something happened to Rusty during a rescue? What if he got hurt or lost? "I need to think about it," said William. "Of course. But know that a dog with these natural abilities is rare. It'd be a waste not to use that talent to help people." After the sheriff left, Michael brought it up again. "Dad, did you see? Even the authorities recognize Rusty as special. This could be extra income and you'd be helping the community." "I don't want to turn Rusty into a working tool," replied William. "He's my companion, not an employee." "But Dad, think about it. If Rusty can save lives, he already saved mine. Isn't that enough?" The argument was interrupted by the arrival of Betty Johnson, who wore a worried expression. "William, I need to talk to you. Word's going around town that you're selling the ranch and moving to Denver." William glared at Michael. "Who's spreading that?" "Well, I might have mentioned to a few people that I was trying to convince you to move," admitted Michael awkwardly. "Michael, I never said I'd sell anything." "Dad, I just want what's best for you." Betty looked between them, sensing the family tension. "William, if you need anything, you can count on me. I know we're not close, but we've been neighbors for over 20 years. This land is your home." "Thank you, Betty. It's good to know I still have friends here." Michael bristled at his father's indirect remark, but said nothing in front of Betty. When she left, the argument resumed, more heated this time. "Dad, you're being stubborn. You had a heart attack, you live alone, there's no one around if there's an emergency." "I have Rusty. You can't depend on a dog for everything." "Why not? He's already proven he's more reliable than most people I know." The words hit Michael hard. He realized his father was referring to him, someone who only showed up when he wanted something or when there was a problem. "Dad, I know I'm not the best son in the world, but I do care about you. If you really cared, you would have visited me more often these past 5 years. Ever since your mother passed, you barely set foot here." "Dad, I have my own life, my work, and I have mine here. This farm, this place, Duke, it's my life." Michael stayed quiet for a moment, realizing he might have been unfair. But his reasons weren't just about concern for his father. He desperately needed money. 3 weeks after the incident with the Anderson girl, Michael made a drastic decision. He had received an offer from a local real estate agency proposing a good price for William's farm. Without telling his father, he scheduled a meeting with interested buyers. It was an agricultural company looking to expand its soybean plantations in the area. The offer was tempting, enough to buy a nice apartment in Denver and still have money left for William's medical care. Michael convinced himself he was doing the right thing. His father was stubborn, but deep down, he'd know the decision was sensible. As for Duke, well, in the city there'd be other dogs, maybe even purebred ones, more suitable for an elderly man. On Thursday afternoon, a black car parked in front of the farm. 2 men in suits stepped out, clearly not from around here. William was in the yard playing with Duke when they approached. "Mr. William Thompson?" asked the taller one, a middle-aged man with graying hair. "I'm Richard Parker from Parker Agricultural Enterprises. We're here to discuss an offer for your property." "An offer? I'm not selling anything," William replied, confused. "But didn't your son Michael speak to you? He reached out to us last week, interested in negotiating the farm." William felt the world spin. Duke sensed his owner's tension and moved closer, alert to the strangers. "My son did this without my permission," William said, trying to control his anger. "I see. Well, even so, we'd like to make an official offer. Our company is interested in expanding plantations in the area, and your property has the ideal location. Gentlemen, this farm is not for sale. I was born here and I intend to live here until my last day. Mr. Thompson, we understand the sentimental value, but our offer is very generous, enough for you to live comfortably in the city for the rest of your life." Duke began to growl softly, sensing the hostility in the conversation. The men instinctively stepped back. "Please control your animal," Richard said nervously. "Duke is just protecting his home, like I should have been doing all along." The businessmen realized they wouldn't convince William that day. They left their cards and said the offer would remain open for a few weeks. When Michael arrived on Friday night, he found his father sitting on the porch with an expression he hadn't seen in years. It was the same look William had given him when he'd misbehaved as a child. "Dad, I need to explain—" "No need to explain anything, Michael. It's all very clear. Dad, I just want what's best for you." "That's a lie," William said, rising from the rocking chair. "You want what's best for you." "What do you mean?" "Michael, I'm old, but I'm not a fool. You show up here after 5 years, try to convince me to sell the farm, arrange meetings with buyers without telling me. Either you're in financial trouble or you've developed a very sudden concern for my well-being." Michael lowered his head. He couldn't lie to his father when he spoke so directly. "Dad, I'm having some money problems, it's true. I made some bad investments, got myself into debt, but my concern for you is real too." "How much do you owe?" "Dad." "How much, Michael?" $200,000. William took a deep breath. It was a lot of money, more than the ranch was worth. "And you thought selling my house would solve your problems?" "Dad, you could come live with me. We'd have a better life in the city." "Michael, you're 45 years old. It's time you solve your own problems without sacrificing others' lives." "But Dad, this conversation is over. This ranch isn't for sale. If you want help sorting out your debts, we can talk about other options, but not at the cost of my home." Michael fell silent, knowing he'd lost the argument. Yet deep down, a small part of him felt relieved to have a father who still had the strength to set boundaries. Rusty, who had been listening to the whole conversation while lying at William's feet, stood up and approached Michael. To everyone's surprise, the animal rested his head against the man's leg, as if offering comfort. "Even Rusty has more compassion than I do," Michael murmured, petting the dog for the first time. "He knows you're my son." "To him, that's enough," William said, his voice softer. It was then that Michael truly began to understand what Rusty meant to his father. He wasn't just a pet, but a companion who offered unconditional love, protection, and purpose at a stage in life when those things were scarce. On Saturday morning, Michael woke early and found his father and Rusty on their usual walk around the property. He decided to join them, something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. "Dad, can I come along?" William looked surprised but nodded. The three walked in silence for the first few minutes, watching the cows in the pasture, the cornfields swaying in the wind, the birds singing in the trees. "It's beautiful here," Michael said, as if seeing the ranch for the first time in years. "It always has been. You just stopped noticing." "Dad, I'm sorry for trying to force the sale of the ranch. I was desperate and not thinking straight." "Michael, I won't pretend it didn't hurt, but I understand you were in trouble. How did you know I was in debt before I even told you?" "Son, do you really think I can't tell when you're lying? I raised you. I've known all your tells since you were little." They stopped near the well where Rusty had found the Anderson girl. Michael looked at the dog with admiration. "He really saved that child. You saw it with your own eyes. And he saved me too, didn't he, Dad?" "How so?" "If I'd convinced you to sell the ranch, I'd have destroyed your life trying to save mine. Rusty stopped that when he showed me how much this place means to you." William smiled for the first time in days. He has that power. Makes us see what really matters. That afternoon, they had an unexpected visitor. Sheriff Frank Rogers returned to the ranch, this time accompanied by a man Michael didn't know. "Mr. Thompson, this is Dr. Robert Wilson, a specialist in search and rescue dog training. He came all the way from Denver just to meet Rusty." Dr. Robert was a man in his 60s with white hair and a calm, experienced demeanor. He studied Rusty for several minutes before speaking. "Mr. Thompson, from what the sheriff told me and what I've observed, your dog has remarkable qualities. His physique, intelligence, protective instinct, It's rare to see an animal with such natural potential. You think he could really be trained for rescue work? Not just could, he should. A dog like this could save many lives, but I understand your concerns about taking him away from here. It's just that he's all I have, said William, petting Rusty. And that's exactly why my proposal is different, continued Dr. Robert. Instead of taking Rusty away for training, how about we bring the training here? What do you mean? We could set up a training program right here on your ranch. Rusty would keep living with you but receive proper preparation. When needed for a rescue, you'd go together. You'd be his civilian guide. Michael looked at his father, seeing the growing interest in his eyes. Dad, this seems like a good option. Would there be any costs? William asked. On the contrary, replied Dr. Robert. The state would cover all training and equipment. Plus, there'd be a monthly payment of $1,500 for services rendered. It was a significant amount for William, who lived only on his rural pension. But more important than the money was the chance for Rusty to use his talents to help people without being separated from him. Can I think about it? Of course. But don't take too long. This is the ideal time to start training before Rusty gets too old to learn certain techniques. After the visitors left, father and son discussed the proposal. To William's surprise, Michael was completely in favor. Dad, did you see how Rusty acted when he found that girl? He has a natural gift. It'd be selfish of us not to let him help others. But what if he gets hurt during a rescue? Dad, you've gotten hurt working on the ranch your whole life. Cuts, bruises, that time you fell off the tractor. But you never stopped working because of the risks. William realized his son was right. Rusty was born to help. It was part of his nature. Keeping him just as a pet would be like caging a bird. By Sunday, they'd made their decision. William called Dr. Robert and accepted the training proposal. The program would start the following week and last 3 months. Michael decided to stay at the ranch during the first weeks of training, taking leave from work. He said he wanted to help his father and get to know Rusty better, but William suspected his son also needed time away from the pressure of his debts. The first training sessions were fascinating. Dr. Robert brought special equipment, set up obstacle courses in the ranch yard, and began teaching Rusty specific commands. The dog quickly learned to follow trails, signal when he found someone, and work silently when needed. His focus and obedience impressed even the experienced trainer. I've never seen a dog pick up commands this fast, Dr. Robert remarked after a week. It's like he understands not just what to do, but why he's doing it. William felt his pride grow each day. Watching Rusty become a professional rescue dog was like seeing a child fulfill a dream. Betty Johnson came by daily to watch the training. At first, wary of Rusty's size, she soon grew fond of his gentleness and intelligence. William, I was wrong about Rusty, she said one afternoon, watching him flawlessly complete a tracking exercise. I thought you were wasting your time with him, but really, he was saving you. How so, Betty? You were fading after Margaret passed. Barely left the house, hardly spoke to anyone. Rusty brought life back to you, it was true. William admitted the last few months had been his best since becoming a widower. Having a purpose, caring for Rusty, watching him grow, had filled a void he hadn't even known was there. In the 3rd week of training, they received their first official call. An elderly woman with early-stage Alzheimer's had left her home in Pine Creek the night before and couldn't be found. The family was desperate. This is Rusty's first real mission, said Sheriff Frank Rogers. Are you up for it? William Thompson looked at Rusty, who seemed to understand the seriousness of the moment. The dog was alert, ready to work. Let's go, partner. We've got someone to find. The mission was a complete success. Rusty followed the woman's trail for over 3 kilometers through a dense wooded area until he found her sitting under a tree, confused and scared. She was dehydrated but unharmed. The family reunion was emotional. The woman's daughter couldn't stop thanking them and crying with joy. For Rusty, it was just another day on the job. But for William, it confirmed they'd made the right decision. News of the rescue spread through the region. Local newspapers ran stories about Pine Creek's hero dog. Rusty became a minor local celebrity, but remained the same affectionate, playful companion he'd always been. With the success of their first rescue, more calls started coming in. Rusty and William helped find lost children on trails, missing hunters, and people injured in hard-to-reach rural areas. Each mission strengthened the bond between man and dog. William learned to read Rusty's signals, understanding when he was on a hot trail or losing the scent. Rusty, in turn, learned to trust his human partner's guidance completely. Michael Thompson joined several missions and was amazed by the partnership between his father and the dog. During a particularly difficult search for a teenager lost in a cave, he saw the courage and determination still present in his 72-year-old father. "Dad, you're too old to be taking these risks," Michael said after the 8-hour mission. "Michael, for the first time in years, I feel truly useful. I won't stop now." "But what about your health? What if you have another heart attack?" "Son, I'd rather have a heart attack saving lives than waste away at home waiting to die." Michael realized he couldn't change his father's mind, but he also saw that William was more alive and energized than he'd been in years. Rescue work had given new meaning to his life. A month after their first rescue, they received an unexpected offer. A TV crew from Denver wanted to do a story on Rusty and William. The tale of the 72-year-old rancher and his heroic dog had caught the attention of statewide media. "I don't know if I want to be on TV," William said, uncomfortable with the idea. "Dad, it could be good to show how important your work is," Michael argued. "Maybe it'll inspire others to train their dogs for rescue." Betty Johnson was all for the interview. "William, you and Rusty deserve recognition. How many lives have you saved? People need to hear this story." Reluctantly, William agreed to the interview. The TV crew arrived on a Saturday morning, and Rusty behaved perfectly on camera, demonstrating his skills and obeying every command. The segment aired Sunday night and made a big impact. William's phone wouldn't stop ringing, with people congratulating him and sharing their own stories about special animals. But not all the attention was positive. On Monday, Richard Parker, the businessman who'd tried to buy the ranch, showed up again. "Mr. Thompson, I saw the story on TV. Impressive work you're doing," he said, though his tone didn't sound sincere. "Thank you," replied William, suspicious. "I've come with an even better offer for your property. With all this publicity, its value has gone up significantly." "I've already told you it's not for sale." "But think about it, sir. With the money from the sale, you could set up a much better training center in town. You'd have better facilities, could train other dogs." "My answer is still no." Rusty, who had been lying on the porch, stood up and began growling softly in Richard's direction. The businessman instinctively stepped back. "Mr. Thompson, everyone has a price. What's yours?" "My price is for you to leave my property and never come back." Richard left frustrated, but William was worried. Men like that didn't give up easily when they wanted something. His fears were confirmed 2 weeks later when Michael brought alarming news from town. "Dad, people have been asking about you at the city hall. They want to know about taxes, the farm's paperwork, if everything's in order." "Everything's fine. I've always paid my taxes on time." "I know, Dad, but these businessmen must be looking for some legal loophole to force a sale." It was Betty who brought the most troubling news. One Wednesday afternoon, she arrived at the farm with a grave expression. "William, I need to tell you something. I heard in town that they're spreading rumors about you and Rusty." "What kind of rumors?" "They're saying Rusty is dangerous, that he might attack children, that you're too old to control him. They're trying to convince the authorities to ban you both from doing rescues." William was outraged. Rusty had never shown aggression toward anyone, quite the opposite. He was the gentlest, most well-behaved dog there ever was. "Who's spreading these lies?" "I couldn't find out, but I bet those businessmen who want your land are behind it." The situation worsened when Dr. Miller, the vet, received an anonymous complaint questioning William's mental stability and Rusty's safety. He was forced to make an official visit to assess the dog's condition. "Mr. Thompson, you know I don't believe this nonsense," the vet said as he examined Rusty, "but I had to come because of the complaint." "I understand, Doctor. Do what you need to do." The exam confirmed what everyone already knew. Rusty was perfectly healthy, well cared for, and showed no signs of aggression. The vet wrote a favorable report, but warned that more complaints might follow. 2 days later, a man showed up at the farm, claiming to be a health inspector, wanting to check Rusty's living conditions. William was immediately suspicious. The man had no official paperwork. "Who sent you here?" William asked. "It's routine, sir. We received a complaint about animal mistreatment." "Mistreatment? Look at Rusty and tell me if he seems mistreated." The fake inspector watched Rusty playing in the yard, clearly healthy and happy. Finding nothing to criticize, he left, promising to return for a more thorough inspection. Michael, who had witnessed the visit, was furious. "Dad, this is harassment. We have to do something." "What can we do, Michael? We can't prove it's those businessmen. We could hire a lawyer, report the harassment." "With what money? And even if we prove it, they'll just keep trying other ways to hurt us." The pressure escalated when Sheriff Frank Rogers showed up at the farm one Friday afternoon, looking concerned. "Mr. Thompson, I've received orders questioning the rescue dog program. They're saying we don't have proper authorization to use civilians in search operations." "What does that mean?" "It means we might have to temporarily suspend Rusty's activities while we sort out all the paperwork." It was a hard blow. William and Rusty had saved 8 lives in the last 2 months. Suspending the program would hurt people who might need help. "Sheriff, how long would this regularization take?" "At least 3 months, maybe more depending on the bureaucracy." That night, William stayed on the porch talking to Rusty as if the animal could fully understand him. "They want to separate us, buddy. They want me to sell our house and for you to stop doing what you were born to do." Rusty rested his head on William's knee, as he always did when he sensed his owner was sad. "But we won't give up, will we, Rusty? Your mother Margaret always said those who fight for what's right are never alone." Michael, who had overheard the conversation from the kitchen window, approached. "Dad, maybe it's time to accept help from the community." "What do you mean?" "The people you've saved, the families you've helped, they're grateful. Maybe it's time to tell them what's happening." It was a risky idea, but William realized Michael was right. They weren't alone in this fight. They'd built a network of people who knew the value of their work. On Saturday morning, Betty Johnson arrived at the farm with Stephen Anderson, the father of the girl Rusty had saved in the cornfield. With them was Mrs. Dorothy, the elderly woman Rusty had found lost in the woods. "Mr. William," said Stephen Anderson, "Mrs. Betty told us what's going on. This is an injustice." "That dog saved my life," added Mrs. Dorothy. "If anyone tries to harm you, they'll have to go through me first." Within hours, the news spread through town. Families who had been helped by William and Rusty began showing up at the farm to offer support. Local merchants, who hadn't directly benefited but admired the duo's work, also came to show solidarity. The movement grew so quickly, it caught the attention of the same journalists who had written the first report. A new story aired, this time focusing on the pressure William and Rusty were facing and the community's support. The response was immediate. Local politicians who had remained neutral now publicly backed the rescue program. The mayor of Pine Creek organized a public hearing to discuss the matter. Richard Parker and his company were exposed when an investigative journalist uncovered the link between the anonymous complaints and the commercial interests in William's farm. Public pressure forced the businessman to back down. At the public hearing held in the town hall, William had to speak in front of over 200 people. He was nervous, unused to public speaking, but knew it was important. "Folks," he began, his voice shaky, "I just want to keep doing what I believe is right. Rusty and I never asked to be heroes. We just want to help when someone's in need." The audience applauded warmly. One by one, the families they'd helped stood up to share their stories. There were tears in many eyes as they realized how many lives this simple man and his dog had touched. The outcome was clear. The community wanted William and Rusty to continue their work. The authorities pledged to expedite all necessary paperwork and protect the program from future interference. Richard Parker made one last offer for the farm, but this time it was publicly rejected. The weight of public opinion and local officials' support made it impossible to keep targeting William. With the situation resolved, Michael made an important decision. He chose to stay longer at the ranch, taking an extended leave from work to help his father and get to know Rusty better. "Dad, I want to learn about your work," he said. "Maybe I can help in some way." "Michael, You have your life in the city, your job. Dad, in the last few months, I've learned more about courage and determination watching you than in 45 years of my life. I want to be part of this." William was moved. It had been years since he felt so close to his son. Working with Rusty had brought the family together in a way he never thought possible. Michael began joining the rescue missions, learning about tracking, first aid, and coordinating with emergency teams. He discovered he had a natural talent for the work and found genuine satisfaction in helping people. 3 months after the public hearing, William's Ranch had become an informal training center for rescue dogs. Dr. Roberts secured official approval to expand the program, bringing in other animals and their owners to learn the techniques Rusty had mastered. Betty Johnson volunteered to handle the administrative side of the project, organizing calls and coordinating with authorities. Her experience spreading news around town finally had a positive purpose. In less than a year, Rusty had taken part in 23 successful rescues. William became a respected figure in the region, sought out by authorities from other towns to assist in difficult cases. But the greatest gift of that time was the renewed closeness with Michael. His son had found purpose on the ranch and decided to move to the countryside permanently, opening a small accounting office in town to serve the local farmers. "Dad, thank you for not selling the ranch," Michael said one afternoon, watching Rusty train a younger dog. "If you'd given in to the pressure, I never would have known what I was missing." "And what were you missing?" "The chance to really know my father, to understand where your strength and kindness come from." William smiled, petting Rusty, who had come over during the conversation. "Strength comes from having purpose, Michael, and kindness comes from knowing we're all connected, that helping others is helping ourselves." Rusty looked at the two men as if approving of the conversation, then ran off to play with the other dogs in training. "Dad, what do you think would have happened if you hadn't found Rusty in that storm?" William thought for a moment before answering. "I think I would have kept on living, but I wouldn't have truly been alive. Rusty taught me it's never too late to start over, to find new meaning in life. And you taught me that too." Father and son fell silent for a few minutes, watching Rusty effortlessly guide the younger dogs through their exercises. It was as if he knew he'd become the leader of something far bigger than they'd first imagined. The sun began to set over the ranch, painting the sky orange and red. William thought of Margaret and how proud she would have been to see what Rusty had brought into their lives. Not just a companion, but a purpose, a reunited family, and an entire community brought together by a shared goal. Rusty approached again, tired but happy after the day's training. William picked him up, despite his 72 years, remembering the fragile pup he'd found in that storm. Who would have thought, Rusty? A little abandoned pup would become the heart of all this. Michael smiled, realizing the transformation hadn't been Rusty's alone. They had all become better versions of themselves, thanks to that special animal the storm had brought into their lives. The end of the story. Now we'd love to hear your thoughts on this heartwarming tale. What did you think of William and Rusty's journey? Have you ever experienced something similar with a special animal? Share your stories in the comments and tell us which part of the story touched your heart the most. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other inspiring stories like this one.